It is 5:30. You want me to just start and then she can get in here? I have to read the whole thing. You want me to start? I mean, I have to read the starting point. Is that okay? If I just start and read? Okay. Good evening. It is 5:30, and I now call to order the Grand Island Public Schools Board of Education meeting. This is the January 11th, 2024 meeting. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the Grand Island Independent, which is the district's designated method of giving notice of these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meetings Act are available at the entrance of the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it in to us so that you may be recognized during the request to address the board part of our meeting. If you have not already completed the form, please see the staff person outside the entrance to this room. Public comment is welcome. We do ask that no signs be brought into the boardroom. So if you have not done so, please do go out and make sure you complete one of the forms before we begin tonight. Mrs. Dibbert, would you please call the roll?
Mr. McFarland. Mr. Herlinsky.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Mendez. Mr. Hawley.
Here.
Mrs. Wilson. Here. Mrs. Albers. Here. Mr. Sykes.
Here.
Mrs. Jurgens. Present. Miss Maudlin is here, coming shortly. She's given prior notice that is running a little late.
With that, tonight's meeting begins, as all meetings do with the board at its January meeting, with the reorganization of the board and the election of officers. At tonight's meeting, we will begin with the election of the board president. With that election, we would begin with a call for nominations for board president. At this time, I would seek nominations for board president. Mr. Herlinsky.
I'd like to nominate Hank McFarland for board president.
Okay, we have a nomination for Hank McFarland for president. Do I have any other nominations for board president? Okay. Ms. Jurgens.
I'd like to nominate Lisa Albers for board president.
We have a nomination for Lisa Albers for board president. Do I have any other nominations for board president? Seeing no other, oh, yes. Ms. Maudlin.
I nominate Hank McFarland.
Okay, we have a second nomination, just a repeat nomination for Hank McFarland. Thank you. Do you have any other nominations for president? At this time, we would cease nominations. We have one nomination for Lisa Albers, and we have another nomination for Hank McFarland. I would like to also note that we have Trustee Maudlin is now in her seat, so I just wanted to make that noted for the record. When we vote for the president, we do it by ballot, written ballot. So at this time, we want to make sure that every trustee has the piece of paper. So I just want to make sure everyone has that at your place. So I would ask that you either vote for Lisa Albers or for Hank McFarland, and I will come around and pick up those ballots, and then Mrs. Dibbert and I will count those ballots. You can place them, actually, if you'd like to just place them face down up on the dais. We'll pick those up. Thank you for your votes. With the votes, we have results of the election with Hank McFarland with 5 votes and Lisa Albers with 4 votes. So I would call for a motion reflecting that to elect Hank McFarland with a vote of 5-4. Mr. Helinski.
Excuse me, I'd like to make the motion to elect Hank McFarland for the board president for the 2024 season.
All in favor? And motion passes. Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over for the election of Vice President to President McFarland.
Okay, at this time for Vice President, I will accept nominations from the floor.
I'd like to nominate Dave Helinski for Vice President.
Okay, we have a nomination for Dave Helinski for Vice President. Do we have a second nomination? Ms. Albers.
I'd like to nominate Josh Hawley for Vice President.
Okay, Josh Hawley has also been noted as a candidate for Vice President. Do we have any other nominations for Vice President? Seeing none, we have 2 candidates, Dave Helinski and Josh Hawley, as our candidates for Vice President. At this point in time, if you would go ahead and vote with your piece of paper. Okay, we have our results. With a vote of 5-4, Josh Hawley was voted as Vice President. At this time, I would accept a motion that would accept Mr. Josh Hawley as Vice President.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Josh Hawley as vice president by a 5-4 vote to serve his term of 1 year until the person's successor elected and qualified.
Second by Ms. Albers. All in favor may vote. Motion passes. All right, congratulations, Mr. Hawley. Okay. Okay, then signing of the board, item number 4 on the agenda, signing of the board operating principles by all board members. The board operating principles policy 2111 give guidance as to how the board functions and how board members interact with each other and the public. Each board member at the time the new board is convened will sign the acknowledgement of the board operating principles to indicate he or she understands and agrees to function under these guidelines. The signed documents will be placed on file with the minutes from the January 2024 board meeting. Dr. Stevens.
So at this time, these are operating principles that, since all of you have been existing board members, have already signed. And those of you that have been members of the governance team and or the policy committee have actually been working on some revisions too. So at this time, since you have already signed the existing principles, we're going to forego signing them at this time because you've already signed them. And over the next couple of months, as we bring forward the revisions, we will then bring those forward to you to sign once those revisions have been adopted. So we'll move on. To the board member code of ethics. That's okay. We'll move on to that. So tonight we would ask board member Helinski to lead the rest of the board through the board member code of ethics tonight. Thank you.
Board members' actions, verbal, nonverbal, reflect the attitudes and beliefs of the school district. Therefore, Grand Island Public School board members must conduct themselves professionally and in a manner fitting to their position. Each board member shall follow the code of ethics stated in this policy. As a school board member, I will listen. I will respect the opinions of others. I will recognize the integrity of my predecessor and associates and to the merit of their work. I will vote for a closed session of the board if the situation requires it, but I will consider secret sessions of the board members unethical. I will recognize that to promise in advance of a meeting how I will vote in any position that is to be considered is to close mind and agreed not to think through the facts and the points of views which may be presented in the meeting. I will expect board meetings to spend more time in the education programs and the procedures than business details. I will express my honest and most thoughtful opinions frankly in board meetings in an effort to have decisions made for the best interests of the children and the education program. I will insist that the members of the board participate fully in board action and recommendation that when special committees are appointed, they serve only in investigation and advisory capacity. I will carefully consider petitions, resolutions, and complaints, and I will act in the best interest of the school district.
Okay. The next item on for the agenda tonight is consent agenda. The consent agenda will be as approved as follows. Items number 6.1 through 6.8. Do we have anyone that needs to abstain from voting on item number 6.3, claims as submitted? Seeing none, at this time I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
I would recommend a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second by Ms. Albers. You may proceed to vote. Motion passes. Item number 7.1, school board recognition. Mr. Rouse.
Good evening, board members. Glad you all made it in the weather. So, as you all may know, January 2024 is Board of Education Appreciation Month. So we wanted to, as a district, I'm here speaking on behalf of the district leadership team and all the representatives of staff at GIPS, and wanted to say thank you all for the work that you do on behalf of the school district. It is quite a volunteer gig. I'm not even gonna try to calculate the amount of time, hours that you spend doing the work that you do on behalf of the district, taking care of our staff and taking care of our students. We deeply appreciate it. So we are grateful for that, grateful for all you do and all you're going to continue to do. You probably saw already, you have little goodie bags at your stations as well too. That is a thank you from Mr. Fisher and the district leadership team as well. But know that the thanks comes from everybody at GIPS for the time that you volunteer and dedicate to making the district better. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roush. Okay, item number 8, request to address the board. Each person addressing the board, tonight we have 4, so that each will be allowed 3 minutes when there are 3 or more patrons to allow speakers an opportunity to address the board in a timely manner. We allocate up to 30 minutes for addressing the board at each regular board meeting. Please face the board, not the audience, when you speak. We want to hear what is being said, so we ask the audience to refrain from making comments or sounds that make it hard to hear the speaker. No signs are allowed in the boardroom. We will not engage in dialogue with patrons presenting to the board. The purpose of the request to address the board is to listen to patrons. The board president and superintendent will identify staff to follow up on information requested from patrons when necessary. At regular business meetings, any school district-related matter can be presented to the board, but only agenda items can be acted upon during a given meeting. At special meetings, comments will be limited to the subject of action items of the meeting's agenda. Speakers will not be permitted to make defamatory comments or use abusive or vulgar language. Expressions of personal complaints about staff or students are discouraged at public meetings. Concerns about individuals should be brought to the attention of the appropriate administrative authority. Specific building or program concerns should be brought to the attention of the building principal or program supervisor. Okay, so we have 4 individuals who would like to speak tonight. First up to the podium will be Mr. John Schultz.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is John Schultz. I am a proud employee of Grand Island Public Schools for the past 23 years as a band teacher. I've been mainly at Walnut, but I've had the pleasure of being in a lot of schools, so I've taught a lot of your sons and daughters, even had one of you as a former student of mine. I'm here because over the course of those years, we've been asked to do things differently multiple times, and in every one of those times, we've been given a voice as to how we can continue to do things at the highest level for our students. Last year, you remember some changes happened, and we got asked to go to 1 band and orchestra teacher at each school out of necessity, and thanks to you guys, they approved a floater position that was going to go and help with the beginning students at each one of the buildings. Full disclosure, that did not happen as intended, but not because of us. There was a conflict of schedules, which we've been told will be rectified for next year, and we have full faith that it will. But that position has been absolutely awesome. The change was a step back for us, but the floater position has been great in that we've been able to still serve our students in both the large numbers of kids that we have. We start, roughly 400 plus kids around the district. In that there's a class of 30 violins. There's a class of 50 trumpet and trombone players. So those guys aren't just there as like crowd support. They're doing high level targeted instruction, whether that's for kids that are struggling in the large setting or if it's kids that need the extra push of things that they're catching on too quickly. Those guys have been a huge part of that. I say that because we were informed on Friday that part of the budget cut will eliminate those 2 positions. So I'm here, as that's presented to you tonight, I am hoping and I'm asking that the board hopefully look at any way that we can to not eliminate those 2 positions. I understand that's hard because I'm not here to advocate against my coworkers. I'm not here to say that what band and orchestra do is more important than anyone else in the district, because it simply isn't. But we can't do what we do without those. Not under the current setup that we accepted, and we're okay with it. We just need those 2 positions. So again, I'm asking the board if there's any way we can look at any way to come up with 2 other FTEs so that we do not have to eliminate those. And I know in the scope of a $5 million budget cut, we're talking about a small piece of the pie, but for what we do, this is the whole pie. This is dependent on what we do. So again, I thank you for your time to address the board. I hope that you'll consider what I'm asking, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Second person we have to come up is Josie Lindell.
Good evening, Mr. Fisher and Mr. McFarland and members of the board. My name is Josie Lindell, and I'm currently a Grand Island Public Schools social worker for Skills Academy. The Grand Island Public School social workers have been following the budget concerns that will be presented to you tonight and are concerned about a proposed option that affects the middle school budget. The proposal includes eliminating 2 middle school social workers, which would result in 1 social worker providing services to all 3 middle schools. This would eliminate 2 full-time social work positions that are established based on the district's own recognition that social workers serving individual middle schools is the best interest of their unique needs and their student populations. For 18 years, school social workers have addressed systematic issues for staff, families, and most importantly, GIPS students. GIPS social workers have a multitude of responsibilities that go beyond our job descriptions. You will be told that our main priority is monitoring attendance and addressing academic barriers or concerns before students get to high school. We work hard to identify and address the underlying factors that may contribute to students' reluctance or ability to attend school regularly. Factors that may include lack of transportation and or childcare, physical health, mental health, and child abuse and neglect. Coupling this with the ever-changing requirements from the Hall County Attorney and navigating systems such as the adult and juvenile court systems, hospitals, mental health facilities, and government departments take specialized training and education, time, team collaboration, and willpower. In fact, it was a GIPS social worker who caught and reported the labor trafficking that our GIPS students were experiencing last year. GIPS social workers, with the much appreciated assistance of counselors, also provide students with suicide risk screenings. Since 2020, there have been an estimated 1,100 screeners with an average of 375 screeners per year. So far in this academic year, there have been 50 screeners performed just in middle school. GIPS social workers developed a system that monitors students after a screener is performed to ensure that students and families are receiving the services that are needed. There are times when social workers have to work with agencies and services within the community, which includes the Department of Health and Human Services and law enforcement, to ensure safety of the student. Among these screeners, we are supporting individual students through potentially fatal situations. According to the National Association of Social Workers Practice Guidelines, a ratio of 1 social worker per 250 students is preferred, but if intensive needs are present, then a lower ratio of 1 social worker per 50 students is suggested. GIPS middle schools currently have an estimated total of 2,000 students, and the city is growing. According to data published by the University of Nebraska, Omaha,
You can go ahead and
finish. Okay, thank you. Hall County will see a population growth of 3,500 by 2030 and double that by 2040. That growth will impact the student populations across schools in the district. It will be extremely difficult for 1 social worker to maintain accurate records for attendance, let alone build trusting relationships with students, families, and teachers. The middle school level is really the last chance to impact a student's world view about the importance of school. The social workers are what tie GIPS schools to the communities in which the students live. Many local agencies, committees, and organizations trust the GIPS social workers because of our ability to focus on wraparound services. If a student or family is ever in need of household items, clothing, or safety, it is the social workers that bridge systematic gaps in order for families to be supported by the community. It would be detrimental not only to the students, but our community if social work positions were eliminated. It is time that administrators advocate for the social workers, as it is the social workers who have advocated for the district and families for many years. Thank you for listening to our concerns and advocating for GIPS social workers.
Thank you very much. Number 3 would be Alyssa Alexander.
Hello, my name is Allie Alexander. I am a social worker at Grand Island Senior High. I am a sitting board member of the Nebraska chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, and I am a parent of GIPS. I have a letter for everybody here. I'm going to bring it up to the front.
Thank you.
Dear school board members, as an educator and social worker, I'm writing to express my concern regarding the possibility of cutting social work positions within your school district. Social workers play a vital role in the lives of students, especially those who face difficult circumstances at home, school, or in their personal lives. Social workers provide therapeutic interventions, resource referrals, and support not only the student, but also to the teachers, the school environment, and the community. Research has consistently showed that social workers in schools improve academic outcomes, reduce truancy, and promotes positive social-emotional development in students. The social work profession is grounded in values of dignity and worth of all individuals, which align with the mission of your school district. Cutting social work positions would not only impact the well-being of your students, but also have long-term consequences from the community. School social workers are an essential component of the education system, and their removal will be a significant loss for students, families, and the community. I urge you to reconsider any decision to cut social work positions within your school district. I understand fiscal matters are paramount, budgets are tight, and the needs keep growing. Instead of cutting social work positions, let us work collaboratively to develop creative solutions that ensure students have access to the support and resources they need to succeed. Investing in social work positions is an investment in students' academic, social, and emotional well-being and our community's long-term success. Thank you for your time and consideration from Dr. Susan Ray, who is the director of the Grace Abbott School of Social Work at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. I have another one from Emily Arkfield, who is an MTSS and the Nebraska MTSS office in support of our social workers as well. Hi, it has recently been brought to my attention that there is a proposal to cut 2 school social worker positions in the Grand Island Public Schools. As a previous school social worker and board member of the School Social Work Association of Nebraska, this is disheartening to hear, as GI's support of and belief in the impact of social workers in their schools and community was always impressive. While I understand the hope is that the work in those 2 social workers were doing would be picked up by other school staff, the reality is that it is not possible. If you remove the support of school social workers in meeting the social, emotional, behavior, mental health, and resource needs of the students and families, as well as the support they provide to other educators in their buildings and in the district, those needs will remain. The students, families, and educators will either fall through the cracks or will pull other staff's valuable time and resources, which will leave others with less support. Cutting 2 critical positions that provide a wide range of positive supports will have a direct impact on student academic progress and outcomes. I believe, am I out of time? Do I have more time? Out of time?
If you can finish up the next 60
All
seconds,
right.
that'd be
All right. I've got one more. And this is from Mary Bainey, who she was a long-term community member here in Grand Island and also a social worker. I am writing to you regarding the decisions that you will be making related to proposed budget cuts for the Grand Island School District. My specific concern is about the elimination of some positions on your district school social work staff. We lived in Grand Island from 1979 to 1985, and our children went to school in Grand Island. Our daughter attended kindergarten through 4th grade, and our son attended kindergarten, both at Dodge Elementary School. I feel that they received a great foundation to their education. They both have master's degree and are established in their chosen careers, so they got off to a great start as Dodge Dragons. I know that Grand Island has seen many changes since the time we lived there, but I also know that it is a strong and viable community in Nebraska. Those who live there want as good or better education for their children. Side note, remember we have thousands of people moving here specifically for an education. Those who live there, I want that for those families too. While I was not working in the schools when we lived there, I was an active and involved parent and volunteer. Since leaving Grand Island, I have become a master's level licensed clinical social worker in Nebraska. I chose to become a school social worker and was employed by Millard Public Schools. I have since retired, but I remain active in our Nebraska State School Social Worker Association. I know the important role that school social workers play in the life of school buildings. They bring a special perspective related to the students attending school in the buildings they serve. Grand Island Public Schools in recent years has become a beacon of light across the state in the use of school social workers. School social workers' #1 goal is to ensure that students are engaged learners. Students today have many outside influences that can impact the goal. Social workers play a major role in helping these students and families deal with those issues. Many of these issues directly impact a student's mental health and subsequently education. As you know, licensed clinical social workers in Nebraska are also licensed mental health practitioners. I noted that it was reported in the media that school personnel from your district were the people who noticed and reported that some of your students were working at dangerous jobs late at night. Side note again, that was a middle school social worker, by the way. That brought that situation to national attention and hopefully improved the lives of many students. My guess is that some of your social work staff was involved in that issue. We were, directly. Please do not.
Ms. Alexander, could you kind of wrap it up for us, please?
Last paragraph, sentence, sorry. Please do not eliminate school social worker positions at the middle school level. I understand you may have financial issues you are dealing with at this time. School social workers go above and beyond to keep to keep the school social work beacon of light shining in Nebraska and to ensure that your students have best learning situation possible, as I felt my children did in the 80s. Thank you for listening to my concerns, and that was Mary Bainey, who is a clinical social worker here in the state as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Dana Holtz-Pavic.
Thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Dana Holtz-Pavic, and I am an English language newcomers teacher at Barr Middle School, and I've been an employee of the district for 10 years, and my son graduated from Grand Island Senior High last year and was a Barr Middle School student also. I am coming to you tonight to request that we reconsider the budget cuts of eliminating 2 social worker positions. And I'm speaking about this because I feel that our social worker positions in each school are essential. We tend to focus on the academics, but without our social workers being able to help the staff and help the students through their physical concerns, their mental concerns, we would not be able to do our job well. I have personally seen the effect that Ms. Sheldon has had at Barr and the effect that it has had on my students who have had phenomenally traumatic experiences in their lives. And because of her guidance, her knowledge, and her resources, we were able to get those students what they needed. And I see the change in the classroom. They go from angry students who throw themselves on the floor to being able to sit and talk to me, have a conversation, work through their anger in a constructive way, and then learn. I have seen families who are beyond stressed, they're scared, and they have found help and respect from Ms. Sheldon, and they can find what they need so that they can be good parents and good caregivers to their children. And so that's why I'm coming here tonight, is because I feel that I know that this is a hard job to find budget cuts. But again, I would say that the social workers in our middle school classrooms, in our middle school schools, are essential to our success. So thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone's comments. Okay, information items, number 9.1. GIPS cybersecurity licensing and support renewal. Mr. Corey Gerhardt.
Good evening. So a couple of IT items this evening to talk about. This is an item that is an annual renewal, but we do it in multiple years because it gives us a price advantage when we go to negotiate the agreements. Essentially, this quote is for all of our edge firewalls, so our firewalls, our endpoint security, our antivirus, the anti-malware software that we use in the district, as well as the maintenance and support for that equipment. So as you can imagine, the amount of network infrastructure and data that we push on a daily basis is pretty substantial, and it requires us to buy enterprise and carrier class equipment. And so this is unfortunately one of the things that goes along with that, and it's the high price tag for that licensing, maintenance, and renewal. However, we were able to secure close to a 21% reduction from what our previous renewal licensing was for this. So this actually represents 21% underneath what our budgeted costs were for this going into to this cycle What the plan then is to renew this for a period of 30 months, and at that time, we'll be able to use some federal funding through the E-rate program to actually purchase new equipment and pay for the licensing at the same time with that to start another 5-year cycle, and then we see as far as we can go with that equipment. So having said all that, are there any questions that I can answer in regards to this quotation?
Seeing none.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Gerard. All right, next on the agenda is item number 9.2 under policy. We'll have Mr. Matt Fisher speak.
Okay, since it is January and we have all of the legal hoops that the board has to jump through, I thought this would be a good time to talk about more legal board positions. And policy 1210 deals with the school district's legal status. And so as we look at the school district's legal status, and this policy really ties to the naming of the district, and we had a little bit of discussion around this a few months back where we were going through some of the research to find out what the legal name was, and we've had all kinds of different legal names based on where we're at. We're still wrangling with the IRS to change the name to match what the legal name is everywhere else. But the official name of the district is Hall County School District 2, according to the state of Nebraska. That is what the official name is. And so that wasn't what was in the policy. It was missing the 2. And so recommending that we add the 2. And then the other change that are recommending there in that first paragraph is it's that statement that said, but the Grand Island Public Schools may be used as the business title of the district. Well, I don't know where the came from or how long it's been there. It's just like the Ohio State University. But normally we do not use the as anywhere except for it is in the policies. As we went through other policies, we discovered that it does say the Grand Island Public Schools district in a number of different places. So anyhow, recommendation would be simply that we drop the that is part of that. So any questions about that legal status? All right, then the next policy also deals with legal status, but this is the legal status of the board. And in this case, there really isn't anything that we needed to change. Simply is just a review of that legal status because it is tied directly with the statute. So unless they change the statute, we really don't have to do anything with the policy other than simply review it. Okay. The next policy deals with conflict of interest. Again, this deals with board operations. And in this policy right now, we did not find anything that was contrary to our operating procedures. So again, this would just simply be a review of this policy. Questions on this one? Okay. Then voting method, which we practiced earlier as far as officer voting, and it does specify that in this policy that the voting for officers would be done with a written ballot. Otherwise, it's done on a voice vote, although it does recognize that electronic recording system, which is what we do, can be used. So I think everything there aligns with what we're doing, so we're fine on that one. So again, just simply a review. As we get ready to move into the spring where we will be doing our registration of students, we had found a couple of things that we felt like we wanted to make sure that we addressed in terms of the policies. One of the recommendations that's a part of the cost-cutting plan that the board will be considering later would be to change the number of students that we had in each of our preschool classrooms from 15 to 20. And so that change would need to be made here in this policy where those numbers are listed. Otherwise, the rest of this policy does align with where we're at currently. Questions on that? Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hawley.
Mr. Fisher, can you tell us how many teachers that is per classroom with 20 students?
20 students with 3 adults, 1 teacher, 2 paraeducators. So currently we're doing that with 15, and you know, again, by moving the number to 20, that's a maximum. And that actually is what is allowed by the guidelines for preschools in Nebraska, is up to 20. And certainly there's going to be some situations where 20 will not make sense, just simply because of some of the needs of students. And that's been a part of the discussion that we've had with the preschool and the staff there. So. Okay, the next policy deals with transfers within the district. And again, this is a part that we will deal with on a fairly frequent basis as we start going through the registration process, because we typically do have a number of students that request to transfer from their neighborhood school to another school within the district. So there are a couple of, just again, alignment of what the policy says with what the practice that's been being utilized is. Just some minor changes here. Transfers will be reviewed and approved based on the following priority. Priority 1 is the capacity of the grade level. Obviously, that's where we have to start, is we have to see whether there is room or not in the grade level where the transfer is being requested. Priority number 2 would be, and again, this is the same thing, it's just a little bit of a change in wording. It was sibling of a student accepted as a transfer previously. And previously could have meant that they had a sibling that went through there 5 years ago that's no longer there. And so again, that changes that priority, and really felt like the wording should be a sibling that's currently enrolled at the requested school. So again, obviously we're just trying to accommodate parents that would want their students in the same building. Number 3, parent is a staff member at the destination school. And then number 4 deals with daycare needs. 5 would deal with attendance or discipline issues at the neighborhood school. And then eventually we would consider enrollment option students in those various schools. Questions about any of those changes there? The other change that's listed there is applicants will be notified of approval or denial prior to August 15th. Just felt like maybe a better timing would be prior to the first day of the school for the current year. So in other words, they have to be, and our notification process really is much earlier than that. That's the end date. It has to be done by that time. The intent would be to certainly notify parents much earlier. Questions on that? I believe that's all there is to that policy. And I think that is all of the ones that we are doing as information items for this month. Questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Okay. Action item number 10.1, GIEA Exclusive Bargaining Agent 2025 through 2026. Dr. Kohler.
Hello, I'm here to see if there are any questions about recognizing the GIA as the exclusive bargaining agent.
Nope. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time to recognize the Grand Island Education Association as the exclusive bargaining agent for the 2025-26 contract year.
I would make a motion to recognize the Grand Island Education Association as the exclusive bargaining agent for the 25-26 contract year.
Seconded by Mr. Helinski. Discussion? Seeing none, may vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Kohler. Item number 10.2, District Multi-Year Microsoft Licensing Purchase. Mr. Gearhart.
Hello again. This was on last month's agenda, if you recall. This is essentially our OS licensing and our Microsoft Office licensing for all of the computers in the district. We were previously on a subscription that essentially was double the cost of what this is going to do for us. So this reflects a 6-year investment that would get us the licensing necessary to push us through for the next 6 years, as well as show about a 50% savings in what we were currently working with. You'll see that those savings reflected here in a little bit on some future action items. So are there any questions specifically I can answer about this quote? Okay.
All right, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept the District Multi-Year Microsoft Licensing Purchase Agreement.
I'd make a motion to approve the district multi-year Microsoft licensing purchase as submitted.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, we proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 10.3, accept and place on file audited financial report as of August 31, 2023.
Good evening. I'm sure you all had a chance to read the audit from front cover to the final page, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, but as a routine matter, once we receive and file the audit report with the NDE and the State Auditor's Office, we need to accept it and place it on file. We don't ever approve it. It's just a matter of a process, so that's what's in front of you tonight to consider.
This time I would entertain a motion to accept and place on file audited financial report as of August 31, 2023 as prepared by Porter and Company CPAs.
I'd make a motion to accept and place on file the audited financial report as of August 31st, 2023 as prepared by Porter and Company CPAs.
Second by Mr. Helinski. Discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Item number 10.4, authorized Pinnacle Bank account.
Last month, this was an information item for you and your considerations, just as a brief review. Mainly working with another local bank here in town to have the opportunity to invest excess resources, specifically with the activity fund, but really the way the motion is worded is so we can really invest any excess funds. We'll start off slow, start a relationship with them, see how things are doing. And really it's an attempt to gain additional resources with the interest income that'll come from it, have the resources be reinvested locally, and have that local banking experience. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Seeing none, would entertain a motion at this time.
I'd make a motion to authorize Mr. Virgil D. Harden, Grand Island Public Schools Chief Financial Officer, the authority to sign and execute all necessary paperwork to open bank accounts necessary to invest excess funds with Pinnacle Bank for any funds operated by Grand Island Public Schools.
Second by Ms. Malden. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Item number 10.5, overview of plan to reduce expenditures for fiscal 24-25 budget.
So we have an attachment. I'll need you to open that up if you're able, or I can project, whichever works. So hopefully you can all see that at your screens, and it's being projected to the crowd here tonight. So first of all, thank you for your service. I know this month is Board Appreciation, and so I appreciate all your efforts and energies. Of course, reducing the budget is not a fun topic, and you've heard comment this evening. We won't get into the details of names and jobs, but we'll take our process that we've been working on, I'll say for at least the last 3 to 4 months, take it from the 30,000 foot level down to maybe 1,000 foot. The runway's right there, we're ready to go, but we want you to have enough information to make an informed decision about what's in front of you. So, with that said, directing you to the attachment, the first or top part of the attachment really is just something that's trying to describe to you the scope of the problem. And so you'll see that the actual column for 23-24, I would tell you that those numbers on that column are the only numbers that I could say are fixed and set and known. Everything else is an estimate. And so you can see the bottom line there is we had quite a large increase in revenue for the current school year for 23-24, but we unfortunately had also a very sharp increase in expenditures for that school year. So we do anticipate operating in the black for the current school year. Then as we project to the 24-25 school year, which is really what's in front of you tonight, we're talking about the next fiscal year budget. We project worst case scenario, probably not even worst case, we'll just say most likely scenario of up to a $10 million budget shortfall. Because the numbers are indeed estimates, there's only one number on that column, and I have it labeled there as achieved. We know that we're going to have a $460,000 adjustment to our TIOSA aid. Now that's a positive, so that helps, but because of other functions within the TIOSA formula, mainly the equalization function, so when we have a 15+% increase in valuation this year, that certainly helps us, but that has the state looking at us saying, well, you have more resources locally, so you need less resources from the state, and that's a large portion of what we're really trying to address. That's a normal function of within the TIOSA formula. The anomaly that's in front of us is that massively large increase in valuation, second large increase in valuation in 30 years, and so that's a large portion of the story. The other portion of the story is the fact that given the market conditions that we are in with personnel, we had to make hard, tough decisions to invest in our people. That cost a lot of money. And so we have a revenue problem and we have an expenditure problem. And so that's what the $5 million is trying to address. So with that, I will let you know that we, of course, will kind of chunk this into the district-wide type reductions. Elementary / preschool reductions, middle school, high school. We'll talk a little bit about next steps and kind of summarize. So at any time, please feel free to stop me and ask me questions to seek more information. I may or may not have the details available for me tonight, so try my best to give them to you. So the way the next portion of the handout spreadsheet attachment works is it's color-coded, so the purplish colors really all represent the district-wide or the DLT level. So the, of course, description there, kind of the area, if there's an FTE associated with it, that's identified. The first amount column that's there has one number in it, that 1.5 million. That's the total that we have achieved as far as what we've identified in this area to reduce. So district-wide DLT area, we targeted 1.5 million. We're at 1519172. And so the total again is 5 million. We've achieved a couple things. You can see that to the far right. And there's one item that I'll call an add back. So like it or not, we're going to go through this line by line kind of thing. So it's just kind of one of those things I think we have to do to try to clearly communicate our intentions. So the first line, first number of lines deal with the district leadership team. We felt that these reductions had to center in around the leadership and have a piece of skin in the game, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And so there's a number of FTE reductions. So the first one is proposed to move or close the front entrance of this building, relocate the opening or the entrance, main entrance to the personnel area, and actually eliminate the front receptionist position. The second item then is one of the DLT. The next three items really are all DLT, so district leadership team members that are here and employed in this school year will not be here next school year. So their functions either need to go away or be reassigned. So that's why some of the numbers are wildly different as far as what we can achieve. Some of them are net, most of them are net. Sometimes you have to reassign jobs, and to do that you need to give additional salary. Other times you have to reassign those to other people and they have to pick them up outside of the DLT. So we also have a line item to eliminate the innovation and engagement line item budget. You might remember that just last month we recognized Jennifer Worthington's last board meeting, and so that would have been her operational line item budget that we are able to eliminate by her retiring. So probably the only name I'll use. We'll see. So there's a next two line items. Elimination of the EAB, Education Advisory Board. It's a think tank research entity that we do fee with on an annual basis. We use them sometimes, but probably aren't getting as much out of it as we should, so we targeted that as a reduction. We currently have a contracted lobbyist, so we are proposing that that would be something the board consider to reduce for next school year and eliminate that relationship going forward. The communications department re-looked at their line item budget and in doing things differently, electronically, a lot of different, instead of doing larger print type things, doing more electronic and that kind of thing, able to identify a large amount of line item budgets that they can eliminate the spending because they'll change the way they do business. They'll become more efficient because they'll do it in a lower cost mechanism. Hopefully it will still reach out to the people that we need to reach. Now there is an add back here in that we went ahead and as a DLT thought that it would be a good idea to add class intercom, and I can't give you all the details of what class intercom does. Our communications director would have to tell you that, but we got rid of less talk and some other things. So those things are, the less talk is achieved. We have done and signed the contract for the $20,000 for the classroom connect, or class connect, or class intercom, I should say, to use the right term. So that one actually, even though it says add back, it could also be achieved. So that's happened. But all the other ones are all just proposed at this point. So continuing on, then the next two items are really associated with reallocating resources at the district level from non-local expenditures. So in other words, federal or state programming, and having that be shifted from the other general fund. So in essence, we're having federal programs pick up expenditures that we're currently paying for. They're paying for them next year and into the future. And so that reduces that general fund, non-federal, non-state expenditure off of our financials. So that's what those two items are about. We looked at the IT department, and Corey presented one of the things tonight, And you just approved the Microsoft licensing. He's able to achieve some cost savings by going through the bid process. And so he's able to be more efficient with the dollars that he had, able to save money to the district. And so there's a couple IT items there. We have another district-wide administrative position, but this one, instead of being at the DLT level, is at the district-wide L for L level. You went through a number of reductions last year on the L for L team, so this is an additional reduction in that team. And my computer just went to sleep, so I apologize. I have to log back in. Now I have to type it in right. One more try. I have cap lock on. No. Yeah, I have no idea how I got cap locks on, so I apologize. But now that I have my screen back up, and so we're down to the second to the bottom line, and so the bottom line is on this DLT section. We did not get 300 or 1.5 million totally identified. We came up about $330,000 short. So that's what that second amount column is, the negative dollar amounts, the reductions that we've identified. The far right-hand side is the balance left. So as we go, so the DLT district-wide level has more to do, and so example I'll give you is just this week's DLT. We identified another grant that's $61,000. It's a new grant that we can reallocate, much like those two line items I mentioned. Where we have some state grant money that's new that can pick up general fund expenses. We eliminate those expenses from the other non-federal, non-state line item because they're picking up the expense. So we've identified $61,000 since we prepared this sheet. So that's an update that will happen. And so that's maybe kind of a side thing to make sure you know that this is a continuing living, breathing type thing. Once you would approve it, it would still continue to have iterations. It just would become more precise as we move forward, and it would be more targeted because we have those areas that we've identified. So with that, I have explained page 1, so not too bad, I don't think. Any questions about the overall issue that we're faced with or anything that we're proposing at the district leadership team-wise or district-wide? And I'll just let you think about that for a little bit, and we'll just go on to the next page, which has fewer line items but maybe less detail, and some of it's due to the fact that they're pretty straightforward items that I think are pretty easy to wrap your head around. 3 different colors, 3 different areas. The light blue is the elementary / preschool level, and so we're proposing to eliminate some transportation for the elementary schools. We're proposing for the early childhood to restructure the classroom size. So it's not as much a expenditure reduction as it is by doing that, we'll have more students in the program, which would generate additional formula students in the TIOSA aid, which would generate additional dollars for the district. And then a building budget reductions at the elementary level, 10% across the board, and you can see that right now their budgeting is just short of 1.2 million, so that would be about a $116,000 decrease. So we had targeted $500,000 for the elementary / preschool level, and we came up with about $266,000 worth of reductions through those 3 items I just mentioned. So that's elementary preschool. I'm just going to keep on keeping on. So at the middle school then, we're proposing to reduce the transportation cost by a significant amount, the $300,000 there. So that is the the middle school, to and from school, for school. We'll still continue the after-school busing, and of course special education busing. None of that will be cut for next year. And so that's important that you know about that. There's 11 various certified positions that we've identified, and 3 classified positions that we've identified for the savings that are outlined there. And then the last three items for the green colored area, which is the middle school, is a 5% across the board reduction for each of the middle schools. And you can see the individual dollar amounts. And so we did a little better. We targeted $1 million at the elementary or middle school level, and we're at $1.2 million at the middle school level. And so then finally, the senior high, the first item on that is to close Wyandotte. It probably should say divest of Wyandotte because it's an important nuance, for lack of a better term, in that it doesn't help us to just stop using the building and continue to own it, because we have to pay insurance, we have to pay to make sure it's at least heated so the pipes don't freeze. So there's operating holding cost. What we're proposing is that you consider actually closing and then divesting of the Wyandotte Learning Center going into the next school year. We do realize that could take up to a couple years, so the savings that you see here are really just year one of 2 overall. So that dollar amount you see is what we think we could save, even if we have to go another year and own it before we can divest of it. So that's important. Again, some reductions in transportation, specifically newcomers, because the newcomers program would be shifted from the Wyandotte Learning Center to CPI, and they would have different busing needs, which would allow us to lower the cost there. And then other transportation costs for the senior high would also be eliminated. Eliminate 1 administrative position at Grand Island Senior High, 17 certified teaching positions at Grand Island Senior High, and 2 classified positions. And then there is the defunding of the ELPS, or the Education Law and Public Safety. So that's one of the things that I'm sure you're keenly aware of, that the proposal proposes to take from 5 academies to 4, and from 20 to 11 pathways. And so that's the operational budget of that pathway that would no longer be needed at senior high. And then and across the board, on top of that, a 2.5% reduction, another $20,000. So when you add all those targeted budget reductions, efficiencies, however you want to label it, that's a $5 million reduction. So there's about 330, we've identified, so we're about $270,000 away, in my opinion, just a little over $250,000 short of pretty precise known next steps that we need to take to achieve those dollar amounts, assuming that you're okay with every one of those line items and you approve it as presented. So next steps, obviously we would need your approval. We would then continue with further implementation of each of these items. We'd have to follow our reduction in force process. We'd have to continue to look at staffing for next year and see if there's anything that, as you know, other programs, other influx of needs, like students with high needs because they're new to the we'll say newcomers, doesn't mean we won't have to hire additional staff, even though we're letting staff go in these other areas. So it's a dichotomy of the situation we're in. So we're going to have to present some type of staffing plan to you. It may be neutral as much as it can, but we'll continue with that process. And then, of course, we'll continue with our budget process as normal. So that really, for me in the business office and the rest of the administrators, starts off February 1 in earnest to really start working on the line item budget for next year. So that will continue. So obviously there'll be many things and parts and pieces in the district that'll be different. It's not fun to reduce, but it's unfortunately, I think the picture that we painted for you about the need of where we're at, it's very clear that we have to become more efficient. So I'm going to stop there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Ms. Albers.
Thanks for all your work on this, Verge, and everybody. We've been talking about this ad nauseum for weeks now, and it's been painful and certainly given me a stomach ache or two. So can you talk a little bit about attrition and how attrition might affect some of these numbers. I'm just going to give you a little background too. So I'm highly concerned about doing away with the social workers. Like, really makes me physically ill. So, because I remember fighting for those social workers. You and I had this conversation. I was fighting for those positions years ago. And I feel like some of the cuts, although unintentionally, are really impacting some of our most vulnerable students. A lot of the students that need transportation are going to be students living in poverty that don't really have a lot of options. So then I'm also wondering how that will then impact our attendance. You know, kids that want to get to school, can they get to school? So I guess is this, you know, I don't want to lose hope that we can't keep these social workers, because we have had 2 suicides in the last several months. Mental health is a big need for everyone, but particularly for students. And I'm concerned about doing away with social workers because their services are different than a counselor. You know, social workers understand how the systems work in our town. They're able to provide, well, somebody said wraparound services. They're able to get beds for kids. Who's going to do that? The counselors are already overworked. And so are they really going to have the time to get a student a bed, to make sure the student has food, to make sure the student has shoes? I mean, the social workers are really, you know, they're working at the ground level with these students. And so we have that, and then we have the transportation. I'm getting emotional, but then we have the transportation portion of it. And I really feel like when we set out on this, we said we don't want these cuts to impact the poorest and the most vulnerable of students. I know none of us here wanted that. I know you didn't want that. I know Mr. Fisher didn't want that. I know nobody in this room wants that, but I feel like it's still happening. And I don't know what the answers are at this point. And I know we have to pick and choose, but I guess I need to hear, or I want to hear, you know, is all hope lost? Or is this, and Verge, you have a heart for kids. I know this is killing you. And so I understand that, but this is, it's absolutely killing me. I'm not the only one on the board this is killing, but I'm just, you know, tell me, if you can, when it doesn't work out like this, what needs to happen aside from getting a big fat check? Or is it just, I don't know what I want from you, but just give me something.
Well, first of all, that's very clear. Second of all, thank you for recognizing my colleagues and the work that's been involved in this. This has certainly been a team effort. I stopped counting the meetings at 50, and you know, some of them were big, everybody, and then down from there. And the DLT for months on a weekly basis has been dealing with this. So this plan is not without an extreme amount of thought, purpose, and intent. No one wants the cuts, but we have to make the cuts because we have to be fiscally responsible. All hope is not lost. There is a cyclical nature to our funding and to our processes. You know, I can remember 10 years ago when we had to cut the money at that time. You know, within a number of years, we started to be able to add back, is the phrase I call it, the things that were the most painful to cut. And so, you know, I don't think, I certainly understand your vision or your lens on how you shared that. I think the intent and how we ended up with these things on the list is as far away from the classroom was the mantra. And we know that kids in poverty, you know, the quote is, we found that if we can get students to school, we can teach them. It's an amazing thing. And so it's painful to have to cut that. But I think there's enough resiliency within our community with neighbors, parents, friends, other social services that can help fill the gap as we go through this season, and we'll see what happens. The social workers, you know, I can remember a time when there were no social workers in Grand Island Public Schools, and we fought hard in Lincoln for poverty dollars. We were involved in a lawsuit against the state because we felt that they didn't properly fund this district and other districts across the state because of the poverty issues that we face that are not the same thing that other people face. So I'm going to get off my high horse. I do care about kids. I do care about families. I do care about social issues. I'm not sure that the state is giving us the resources for us to do all the things that we know we need to do. So I don't know that there's a bad guy. It's just the way things are. The other concern that I think we have to wrap our head around is that it may very shortly, within a year or two, be such that we can't find the staff to even have the positions that we want. And we may not have programs because we literally cannot hire people that are willing to work. We may have to close school buildings because we can't find enough teachers, and we have to become more efficient with how we structure our buildings because we can't have isolated 100 student buildings in this district because we have to have those teachers be in classrooms with 25 kids and not 12 or 15. The times are different and we have to change with them. Every year stands on its own. All hope is not lost, but we do have to make a retraction. We have to scale back, reprioritize, and move forward. I hope that answers your question. All right.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you. I just want everyone to know this is hard. I mean, this is my first year, and we're like, budget cuts. All right, let's go. I'm sure all my new colleagues are feeling the same. I mean, it hurts. It's not easy when your tasks. Yeah, it's hard. One of my questions is I'm very curious about the process that was taken to make these decisions. I guess I don't know if you could explain what kind of parameters or protocols were established for the elementary, middle school, and high school to really help guide these administrators. Because I know that we've been in meetings and meetings and we're like, well, we told the school admin to find the dollars, find the cuts. But if you could just explain a little bit more about the process that helped guide them in deciding two social workers, we need to move them around. What led them, what protocols and guidance led them to that?
Well, I'll try my best, and it's my lens, having not been involved in all of those building level decisions and dialogues, because no one person could have attended every meeting. So we started with anything, we gave and painted a picture to the entire administrative team of what the problem was. We gave them a very clear expectation that we were going to have budget cuts for next school year, and we'd further refine that moving forward. So we then had a couple weeks go by and had a second meeting with everybody where we basically said, yes, these are the parameters, and we had to try to give them a target. Much like a student in a classroom that has a learning target, we, as a DLT, as a district, felt that we needed to give the different levels of the organization, the ones that I laid out there, a financial target that they should try to reach. And that was weighted on a lot of different things. For example, elementary level. We knew fully that we had already gone through a large amount of restructuring and had reduced staff and increased class sizes at the elementary. There was not any fruit to be cut from the vine at that point in time. It was very limited, and you can see the lowest amount of reductions are at the elementary level. Don't want this next part to sound judgmental, so I just want to, it's again Virgil's lens from his seat in the organization. There were some situations within the senior high, in the pathways and the academies, that were inefficient to the level that a public organization cannot have 3 or 4 students in one classroom with a $60,000 staff member. Nobody can afford that in this country, much less Grand Island Public Schools. So there were inherent inefficiencies that had to be addressed, and by reconfiguring what we've done, we've been able to really provide quite a few of the opportunities we have now, but just in a different format. So instead of being an academy, instead of being a pathway, they're elective classes because they're more efficient, because we have more students being taught by one staff member, and the extreme inefficiencies of some of the programs have gone away. So senior high was targeted with $2 million. And so then we said, the district leadership team felt we should take on the second highest with the 1.5, and then the $1 million at the middle school. So as far as past that, it really was, again, we had several meetings with each individual group. We had breakout meetings, we had individual meetings as a team, and then we sent them to further work off and plan the details of what they would do. You know, as far as the social workers, you know, I'm not an expert in social worker staffing by any means, you know, kind of thing. But that was a decision that, as we looked at that as a DLT, I think we felt that there was some reorganization, and there can still be some further reorganization of that whole situation, so that middle school isn't serviced by one social worker, but maybe two, by restructuring some other things. The hard part in that is they didn't identify that as a change they wanted. So that's where kind of that becomes more difficult. So it's a long, iterative process within the organization to try to make the cuts. As we said, the number one mantra was as far away from the classroom as we can, knowing that 80 cents every dollar we spend is on staff. And you can't cut $5 million from a budget like this and not impact staff. So I hope I did a little better job answering your question than I did Lisa.
50 questions, I guess, into one. It was more of a statement, I guess. I guess to add on to that, did you give any guidance in terms of like, keep it, I just want to know more of the process. Maybe middle school admin can speak to this, how they went about their process of these are the cuts, because I see transportation is another big one. I also have the same feelings. I also know that our public schools can't be, all the responsibility of transporting our community cannot be solely on the public schools. Our city sucks at public transportation, and I'll say that publicly. They maybe need to invest more on public transportation, and that's something that if the mayor's listening, maybe he can help fill that need for us, because they have funds. And so I guess I just want to know more of like the middle school and how they got to the decisions that they made, because the high school picture, it's pretty clear to me, and the elementary is pretty clear, but the middle school, I think it was just over the past couple of days have just been, it's thrown me in a loop.
Yeah, and I was not involved in those detailed building level. I was involved in one and came and floated in between. And so I can't answer you the specifics of more than what I've just shared. But yeah, if you want some of our fine middle school folks to come up here, there are a whole team of them.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for allowing us to visit with you, and congratulations on serving on the board. It's Board Appreciation Month. I want to tell you thank you. Not a fun time to talk about budget cuts and be appreciated at the same time. I guess I will say I have an advantage over anyone else here. I've been here longer than all of you. As the longest tenured building administrator in our district right now, I can tell you I fought for the social workers before you were here. Vicki Dool, one of my great mentors, and I worked hard to bring the first social workers to GIPS. It was also Vicki and I who fought hard to start transportation services here in Grand Island Public Schools for buses. So it's not an easy decision and it's not easy thinking, right? But every day we talk about the core mission of what we're doing here in our district, and it's really about bringing great core instruction. It's about, collaborative work in our PLCs, and it's really about providing positive supports for our kids. And as we went through that process as a middle level, we really focused on what is that, and the heart of that really is our classroom teachers, right? Every decision you make here at this meeting, every decision that our district leadership team makes, every decision that we make ultimately falls on the shoulders of a classroom teacher to implement. And we don't take that lightly. And so our goal was really to protect our classroom teachers to the greatest degree that we could, knowing that even some of these decisions will have a great impact on them, right? Like how do we, I don't disagree with any of the things that my colleagues back here said when they addressed the board. I agree with them 100%. They are super needed people in this district. And so none of the things that we presented as proposed cuts were actually things that we wanted to get rid of. We didn't come in feeling we were overstaffed. But the situation is that we're asked, right, to make some cuts. And these were the areas we felt directly created the least impact in the lives of our kids. We know they're going to create some impact in some of our kids, right? But the greatest number of our kids, and I get what you're saying when you talk about our most needy. I mean, looking at my building, they're almost all the neediest kids, right? And so certainly those are hard things when you ask us to do those things. And you know, our hope is that as the budget situation starts to resolve itself, that those positions will start to come back to us, because we're certainly not identifying them as not necessary. We just know that in the light of the situation we're in, we're going to have to make some cuts. So I hope that helps you understand kind of our process that we went through.
Well, and going off what something that Mr. Foley said, I mean, we didn't want to, if it was up, you know, we didn't want any of this. We were asked to make some of these. The other thing that we're constantly trying to balance, right, is if we do eliminate more classroom teachers and then we increase class sizes, right, then how's that going to impact students' mental health, teachers' workload? We are still in a teacher shortage, right? So there was no great choices in this situation. We started off a little bit going back to the question that you put to Virgil, and you know, how did this process go? And we started off, and it's been a long process, and we brainstormed as many different options as we could. And each one of those options we had in-depth conversations for, because every option has a consequence. There's no option that we put out there that wasn't going to impact something. Every position that we had in the district was put there for a reason. So we kind of got to a place to where we thought, even with the cuts, we could still provide kids the level of education that they deserve. But yes, there was no excellent options with whenever you're talking about cuts. And Mr. Garcia Mendez, I also got to do the elementary cuts last year, and it doesn't get any easier. So even though it's your first year, it's the second year, it's not any more fun. So
we had several ideas that were shot down. We asked Virgil to buy lottery tickets. He said no. He said that was not appropriate. So just, you know, bringing a little levity to the situation, but it's a tough situation, just as you described. And you're right. Within our community, we have lots of needs for resources that doesn't always have to be provided by the school district. And it's time for our community to step up and not just always expect the school district to take on those responsibilities. So, any other questions? We can answer while we're up here. Yeah.
Ms. Malden, I believe you were next.
I do agree with Eric. Our first year being on the board, we've definitely had to make some hard decisions, but unfortunately, that is part of it. It's not always rainbows and butterflies like we hope, but I kind of had a question. I know budget cuts are hard. I know realistically, like, we're always going to need more teachers. Like, it's just a need. We don't want classes to grow bigger. You know, there's just so many thoughts going around, but the main question I had was for transportation. I know we said, as Virgil said, we wanted to keep it as far as away from the classroom as we could, but transportation reducing that would be some kids not getting to the classroom. So that's a concern for me, because I know there is a lot of new kids coming in, and I mean, Grand Island's diversity is really big, and I know just a lot require that transportation, and I don't want everyone to be like, oh, well, we're reducing transportation, like, what are we gonna do? Because I know that is scary. I mean, especially these freezing temperatures outside, like, you know, during summer when it's warmer, it's okay, you know, you can walk if you had to, but at the same time, realistically, I mean, that's scary. That's going to keep a kid, kids out of a classroom because they can't get there. So I want to know, have we thought of how we're going to manage that?
I think what Virgil said is true. You're going to have to somewhat rely on your friends and neighbors and families to help support that. But I will say you can learn a lot by doing bus duty. And what I learned is that our buses aren't utilized in the way that we anticipated them to be used for a lot of transportation issues. The consistency of our student body and using them every day for the necessity of getting home to and from school is not what we anticipated. And I can tell you that, thinking about just our own status as a CSI school, looking at our great number of students who are chronically absent, and the continued work we do that, it's not transportation that's the cause of chronically absent students. It's a lack of motivation and other family supports that cause that. But I would also say that they aren't utilized in the way we'd expect. They're often just to go to a friend's house or things like that. The one piece that I think gets probably utilized to the greatest degree for exactly what it's meant to be would be our after-school activity bus that is for students who are participating in athletics and need that ride home because they don't have family members that can get them there, and the support network isn't there because it's just a smaller number of people. But yeah, I understand that when those situations arise, we're going to have to work with families individually, and which is what we do in any situation where kids are struggling, whether it's a bus ride or it's an academic situation or a social emotional situation. That's just what we do. And so knowing that we'll take those cases one by one and work through them.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we have kind of thought about a solution, because I understand you said, it's not being used, as it should, but I know there is, a lot of families that do rely on that. I mean, me coming from, I'm not even from Nebraska, I'm, from the South, so if my children, if I wasn't able to take them to school every day, I would be like, well, who am I going to ask? I don't have family here, so am I going to go ask my neighbor, like, hey, can you take on the responsibility of making sure my kid gets to school? And, that could be scary for some, or they don't have neighbors, or, I just want to make sure we do have thought about that, about those kids that are not going to have a way to school.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, we realize that'll happen, and we'll continue to work with those families to come up with solutions.
And I wish we could just keep all the social workers, because I know we need them. So.
Ms. Durgans, do you have a question for them or for Mr. Harden? Okay.
We'll try our best.
Yeah, I mean, good luck with whatever happens here, because I feel very mentally messy around this situation, just like my friends and peers here. So this is beyond conflicting to sort through for me, and I cannot imagine the weight that you must be feeling right now. And I so empathize with you. Also, Walnut Wildcats for life over here. 3.
I know.
Yeah.
Been there. I mean,
Yeah. I have so much respect for all of you. Mr. Foley, I had 3 kids go through your school, and you were incredible. So just a little shout out to you.
Thank you.
This is just really hard to sort through. I am so sorry. I had a tremendous amount. Just hold on one second. I had a lot. I am a mess, and I am just going to wrap it up. I had a lot of people reach out to me in the last 48 hours via text, phone call, and email to communicate their concerns, specifically around the loss of social workers in our middle school buildings. I was provided with examples of impact, and then you just shared, Mr. Foley, a great example about the fact that from your lens, transportation is not the biggest blockade in students getting to school on time or getting to school at all. It is those social, familial components, right? And the loss of social workers, that immediately makes me think of that again. I'm like, it is the life they're experiencing.
Right.
It's absolutely terrifying, right? And I hear you. I hear you loud and clear about you're trying to keep these new vacancies away from the classroom. That makes all the sense in the world. I can't help but to link this to the classroom, though. I am so disappointed in our state, so grossly disappointed in the lack of Nebraska's support to public schools. That is something to be embarrassed about, because the victims are our kids. I think it was Mr. Hardin who said, there's no bad guy. And the words that have been sticking with me is there's no villain. There's no villain here. It's just beyond frustrating because there are victims, even though there may not be a villain. I also want to just say that I second what you said, Mr. Foley, about this is a call to our community. Our community really needs to step up here. It is our responsibility as members, as citizens of Grand Island, to fill this space, because if our state is letting us down, which they are, it is our responsibility to step up. And we have to find ways to be there for our kids who need it the most. I just want to say thank you. And we'll keep on trying to figure this thing out, I suppose.
Well, thank you guys for your leadership in that.
Mr. Hawley.
Slight segue away from counselors and social workers, excuse me. Going back to the comments that Mr. Schultz gave during public comment, in talking about those two positions that support the fine arts at the middle school level, can you remind me what exactly those positions are? Are they full-time? Are they part-time? If we're looking to eliminate them, are there duties that could be pushed? It's a really horrible way to say it, but obviously everybody's assuming different roles right now. Is it something that maybe our accompanists could help with, that we could keep some of the supports? Can you just give me some talk around that so I can get a better understanding?
They are full-time positions, so just to get that out of the way. I'll defer to you guys to talk more about how you think that might work.
I think anytime that we're talking about taking, support away from the kids, it's going to be hard. I think each individual middle school is going to have to work through that, and exactly like how we're going to work through that with accompanists, additional support, co-teaching across, like from our music, band, orchestra, full-time FTEs. So I do think whenever we get our plan in place, right, there are some things that we can do at the building level to make it to where it's feasible and doable for those teachers, and also for those students to receive a good, solid music education in band or orchestra. So we will have to get creative with some of the scheduling and the things that go around that, and that might look a little bit different at each one of the buildings. Yeah.
Mr. Sykes.
Get all the buttons right. Hey, like everyone said, being a tough season for budgets, my biggest concern for you guys is building leaders, being the ones that get to make these decisions. Do you feel like you had the support you needed through that process, and is there anything that we as a board could have done differently to help facilitate either a different outcome, better communication, to support you guys as building leaders? That's a concern of mine. And in addition to some of the other things that were brought up.
Yeah, the investment in those lottery tickets.
Car wash? No.
That's a state thing too. The state wouldn't allow that either.
Bake sale. No, our district, leadership team really, I think was strategic in how they tried to get us to those, that thinking.
I think they did a really good job of being very forward thinking and creating that time into space to where, Virgil said 50 and counting meetings, right? So they created the time and space for us to have some of those conversations. And like I said, each one of those options, we did our best to think about all the consequences that we could see, and some of the ones, you know, we kind of banged our head against the wall, and the ones that we couldn't. So we did, I think, have that time and space that we needed to kind of have some of those conversations.
And I would just add that as a first-year building principal, I was excited at the amount of support we've received. I can tell you, we like to say it's not an emotional thing, but there's not one person that's affected in this that doesn't come in every day to do what's best for kids and that isn't needed and isn't valued. And so it was nice to be able to go and have those follow-up conversations of, hey, we talked about this, can you remind me? And so it was nice. I really felt like the district leadership team was there to support us in that and help us through the process.
Mr. Helinski. Okay, well, we'll go with Ms. Wilson.
I think he was first, but I'll go. I'm just going to speak to the band orchestra floater position. I have had, all my kids have taken either orchestra or band. And when I went to my daughter's 6th grade orchestra concert this year, and looked at the amount of kids, and that's obviously just at one of the middle schools, I cannot imagine as a solo teacher being able to teach a brand new instrument to kids by myself. Impossible. And when we think about, oh, well, you know, we can move people around, and I mean, you really can't when it comes to band and orchestra. Those are very specific talents and skills. You can't just put any person in with the band teacher or the orchestra teacher and have them help teach kids how to tune and how to use their instruments right. Like, you can't do that. And that is, I mean, obviously the social workers are super concerning. However, I know there's also a lot of kids throughout all 3 middle schools where kids who are underserved find their passion in band or orchestra or in the fine arts. And a lot of times those can be opportunities for them to get scholarships for certain things. And so I think that those 2 positions for me, if that remains that way, could be the complete downfall of beginning. Because if kids are not getting what they need during those first couple months of learning something and they're frustrated, they're done. And so if we don't have that position there and have another person to support those beginning kids, I mean, I feel like it's just the end for so many kids who are going to be really frustrated.
Mr. Linsky.
Well, my thunder was kind of taken by Mr. Sykes, and Mrs. Wilson there was going to ask, what can we do? But big advocate of fine arts, which I'm sure everybody in this room knows. My daughter wants to become a music teacher. And it's because she learned the love of music, not just because of what I've done, but because when she was at Westridge, Mrs. Shack and all the other stuff that was going on there, she fell in love with music, and she wants to make this career now, and she wants to give back. And it's interesting to watch her light up when that happens, when she talks about it. She can't wait to get started at UNK and start going into their music ed program because she wants to teach. And I'm afraid that is going to be extinguished if we can't fix this somehow. And I don't have the answers. I don't know the answers. And I don't want to be in your shoes because a lot of things have to go, and we don't exactly know how this is all going to end up. Nobody has a crystal ball. But with that, I'm going to end this with I hope that the city, and not the city government, but The city, as in the citizens, as in the parents, as in the grandmas and the grandpas and the neighbors, are listening to what's going on here. Because unfortunately, we are at that point where they have to step up. Have to. Otherwise, we're going to be going the wrong direction, and we're going to go real quick. And so that's what I plead to the parents that are listening or see this, or grandmas and grandpas, or even the neighbors who don't have kids anymore. If you can help out taking a kid to school, picking them up from football, picking them up from a show choir camp, something, that is going to help immensely. And so I just hope that message gets out. And I think you guys are doing a great job of pushing that out. That, hey, parents, we need help. We can't do this all anymore. And unfortunately, you know, when I started on the board, you kind of saw that coming, and unfortunately we're here already. So that's really what I wanted to say is we need to step up as Grand Island citizens, not just people who have kids at GIPS. We need everybody's help.
Mr. Hawley.
My question is for Mr. Harden. So if anybody else has questions for our middle school administration, you can certainly step past me for a minute. No?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I just leave with just what we're talking about. It takes a village. I mean, that was a saying a long time ago. It really does. It's going to take that now for us to continue forward. So thank you for understanding that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Mr. Harden, so like some of the other board members were saying, we've had plenty of meetings about this. This all started back at the board retreat, I think, and then we've had plenty of small group conversations. One thing that we've talked about throughout these meetings is obviously cuts from the top, right? And possibly doing a wage freeze at the administration level. And I don't see that on the list. Is that still an option? Is there a number that we should be looking for as a cost-reducing measure? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I would say that I have the position personally that I can just say, yeah, feel free to do that. I'll be okay. But my colleagues across the table, with the deep cuts at the district leadership team level, there is not a realistic way for us to freeze things, because we're going to have to reallocate very detailed, time-consuming tasks that for folks that simply aren't going to be there to people that will be there, and we'll need to compensate them for that and then still be competitive, because one thing we don't want to do is get to the point where we start pushing people away mid-year or at the end of next year because the task is so heavy that it literally can't be done. And then we have to go out to the market and try to hire somebody, and guess what? It's $25,000 increase in their compensation because we've been stagnant. So there's not enough juice there, as far as what we can cut through that means, and it's cost avoidance versus an actual cut. So it's a little different than an actual. We're better off doing what we're presented, which is a reduction in FTE, and then still letting the people that remain have some kind of additional compensation to keep competitive, than to freeze and have to try to catch up sometime later. So we talked about that at length at the DLT level.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding, even with the reallocation of duties to other members of the district leadership team, it's not a dollar-for-dollar reallocation, right? We still have a cost savings, it's just not at the freeze level. Would that be accurate?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia-Mendez.
Thank you. I have 3 questions, maybe 4, so just to prep you. Well, one of the things we talked about, newcomer transportation. Mm-hmm. From my understanding, we're moving the newcomer program from Wyandotte to CPI, but from my understanding, we bused students from Gish to Wyandotte, vice versa. So how is that going to play out with CPI? Can you walk me through the newcomer experience this fiscal
Well,
year?
I don't know that I can do a good job of painting the picture as clear as maybe what you want, but in essence, there'll be a shift in the transportation needs because they're gonna start their day at CPI.
Yeah.
So there won't be so much of it, they'll still have a noon, transportation between, so this the AM, PM transportation from senior high to Wyandotte that can go away, but the CPI. So we're asking those families, like every other family in the district, to get their kids to one location to start the day. At noon, we'll have to have transportation for the CPI.
Okay.
So that allows that one bus route, the AM, PM, for newcomers to go away.
Sweet. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh
That's
my
my
gosh.
understanding, team. If I got it
yeah,
wrong,
that makes sense. Yeah.
let me know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
You bet.
clarifying that.
You bet.
That was a big question for me. Another one is like, if we were to move social workers around, is there a possibility where one of them, maybe thinking creatively, helps with the transportation? I know for some students, like I've always heard that students, even though the bus stop is like 2 blocks away, they still don't get on it because, like what we said, the family issue, different dynamics at play. I don't know if it'll be a possibility to maybe designate those social workers to kind of help with that, fill that need. Because my huge concern is just truancy. And as many people in our community might be worried about graduation rates, it's a huge issue if we don't get those kids in the classroom and get them equipped to graduate. I just don't want us to find ourselves in a situation down the road a couple years from now where graduation rates are decreasing because of the truancy. So I wonder if we could be pretty creative in terms of, I don't know if there's been any plans or what your thoughts are on that.
I'm going to let my esteemed colleague, Mr. Matt Fisher, answer that question.
So I think when you look at transportation and the way it's listed in this plan, it doesn't spell out that we're going to do exactly this or exactly that, because there are going to be situations that we know exist that we're going to have to figure out ways to deal with. And, you know, it may be that we run a couple of routes before and after school that cover the whole city and all of our schools, and students that want to be on those buses may have to be on those buses for 45 minutes or an hour to get from one place to another. But we're still going to provide the transportation. Or it may be, you know, a situation like you're talking about where we utilize, you know, our social workers in a little bit different capacity to make sure that we're providing that needed transportation. We're not going to turn our back on those needs. We're going to figure out a way to do it, just like, you know, 10 years ago when we didn't have busing. Those were issues then too. Now we probably have more students now that they might be issues for, but we're gonna figure out ways to address those. So again, we're not saying that transportation is going to go away altogether. We're going to significantly reduce what we're providing in terms of transportation. But we know we're still going to have to be providing transportation. We may have students that, you know, we have a special ed student that we have to pick up. There may be 3 or 4 other students in that area that special ed transportation vehicle picks up. So I you know, it's hard to paint a picture right now what it's all going to look like because we don't know. We don't know what the needs are going to be. But I do think that we're going to find ways to get our kids to school, because as was said earlier, if we can get them here, that's the first step in educating them.
Awesome, thank you. I also ask these questions. Sometimes people don't like the way I ask questions because I'm not trying to be critical, but more so inform the community that these line items are very complex and they're not black and white. And I think that's always really important to relay back to the community, especially when we're putting out communications. And I just encourage the public to not look at this as just a line item, but if you want to know more information, to please contact the district, because these cuts are complex, and I think sometimes people just like to see something on their news feed on Facebook and then just create a judgment of their own without pursuing the information. And I encourage all public school employees to really look at that board brief that's going to be released by Mitch later on, and really look at it and ask questions, because really our community isn't as successful as it is when our people are not active. One of the final things I guess I just want to touch on is I know that sometimes we like to think that our students can rely on family members, neighbors, and stuff like that, friends to help with transportation, but I just want people to understand that the level of poverty in our area, people in our community, they're disconnected. There's people struggling to pay rent because they don't have the family support, and they're just like Katie was mentioning, they're either just here from a different state or a different community, and they're isolated. They don't have the connections that we like to think that they have. So I just want to misspell that fact that was relayed. But I also just want to encourage the district to, and I'm sure you do have ways to monitor truancy and just the transportation needs, but just really encourage the district to really monitor the effects of these cuts. But yeah, no, thank you for everything that you guys are doing.
Ms. Malden, I believe you were next.
I just wanted to thank you for trying to do your best to explain everything as best as you could. I know this, in the end, it's going to be tough, but I mean, they say diamonds are formed under pressure, and you know, when you're kind of pressured into things and budget cuts, I mean, you do figure out things, and hopefully we can just figure them out, and you know, hopefully things get easier. And I just know that the decisions that we make will affect kids and future kids and so on. But I just wanted to thank you for trying to explain to us and everyone your best.
Thank you. Ms. Albers.
Me again. So if what I said all is not lost, I guess what I was trying to get to is if we have staff that retires, and I don't want to say we find the money, but we can reallocate money. And then I did hear you say something about 2 social work positions, maybe going from 1 to 2 or something. Would that be an option for keeping these positions?
Well, let me try to address your comment about attrition. So when we negotiate in good faith with our friends in the GIEA as a board committee and do a master negotiated agreement, which we've settled and approved and have locked for next year, when we do those calculations, we include some calculations for anticipated attrition as far as the total cost of that package. And so, in essence, that's savings that's already been counted on, is the best way to describe that. And so then, you know, as far as, you know, unknown, I mean, it's an estimate, just like every other number on this page, except for like the one in column, you know, so. Yeah, it's not known with surety, but there is certainly some assurance that there will be savings through attrition, but we've done that already. So as far as the social worker reshuffle, for lack of a better term, you know, I think Matt alluded to the fact that, I guess, a kind of general comments here from Virgil in the bully pulpit, I guess. You know, we're going to have to be more efficient. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to be nimble. We're going to have to change and adapt on the fly as we go through next school year. So I think we're up to the task as an administrative team. Clearly, the passion and the concern that you all have in discussing this here tonight is part of the solution, because we're not going to give up. We're not going to retreat to the point where we have to wave the white flag. We're not there yet. We're simply making adjustments. One thing to put it into perspective, this is a 3.8% decrease in our budget of a roughly $130 million So it could be a lot worse. So we think we're at the right target so that we don't have to be here a year from now. That's my greatest concern, quite honestly, is that we've hit the right target and we're in the right spot and we don't have more to come, at least for a couple years. We'll see. I'm very concerned with some of the plans at the state level and just the limits on the local revenue, the revenue cap that we're now under. Very, very concerned. So I wish I could say that I know that this fix and adjustment will take care of us for the next 10 years. Well, somebody said it. We don't have nobody has a crystal ball. So this is where we're at right now, and we're going to get through it together, and we're going to be creative, and we're going to be efficient, and we're going to do what's absolutely best for kids as long as we have breath in our body. So I'm done being bully pulpit. Sorry.
Okay. Go ahead, Josh. I just wanted to wrap up a few things.
I actually have a question for you, Mr. Fisher. And you can feel free to defer this to somebody else. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what we're being asked to do tonight. We're being asked to approve this plan. And if I'm not mistaken, in conversations that we've had in the small groups with you, if we approve the plan and there are changes, for example, more attrition, or the district leadership team goes back and gets even more creative and we find a different way to do this, that all of these line items do not have to be completed as assigned, correct? So if we have, I don't know, 11 FTE here, and we find some other way to bolster the budget, we could get rid of 10 instead of 11. Am I correct on that? Like, we're not saying this is approved, go get them.
This is an initial plan that really we're asking the board to approve as part of the planning process for that budget. And the reason we're doing it now and not at budget time is because obviously we've got to make decisions around staffing. We've got to make decisions as far as what we're going to contract for transportation for next year. So there are decisions that we have to get started. But you're right, as we go through this process, and really one of the next steps that's going to involve the board is in February, we've got to bring a reduction in force plan for the board to approve that will identify the positions. You know, on the plan that's here, we're just talking about how many FTEs we're going to, you know, potentially reduce. On that RIF plan, it would say we are going to reduce this many of this position. And so that has to be a next step so that we've got the wheels in motion, because again, we're working towards an April 15th deadline where we have to have all of those staffing decisions made. Now, as far as reductions, now that doesn't mean that we can go through all that process and then at some point in time in May, we make the decision, well, we really have got to have this. And so now we're going to put that back in place. We're really just positioning ourselves right now to address the things that we know have to be taken care of in a timely manner. Ultimately, you know, what the board is going to be asked to approve is a budget in August. We're going to be asked to approve a RIF plan in February that's going to put us in a position to get to where we need to get to when it's time to approve a budget in August. So that's really where we're headed with this. And so, again, I think we have to think that the things that are on this plan are pieces that we really have got to know that, you know, if we're not doing this, then we're making a cut somewhere else. You know, so in terms of, you know, the number of FTEs, I think you have to think in terms of that number of FTEs. Could we make a decision to jockey around what that looks like in the end? Yeah, we could. But we have to be thinking. And again, I think when you go back to the whole process, we ask our building administrators at the different, you know, levels to come together. And first of all, we ask them to think about, not just their building. We asked them to think about, at the middle school, what could you give up? And that's hard, I mean, because they made decisions that said, I'm gonna give this up in my building. And not all of them had an equal share in what was given up. So we really did ask them to step up and be leaders and really look at, okay, all the way across middle school, what is it that we could do? In the elementaries, what pieces could we still find? And at the high school, certainly we asked them to dig deep and make decisions around, well, what could you do to be more efficient, to cut dollars and still continue to provide great opportunities for students? So, and again, we did that because we knew that the people that are on the ground level in those areas knew more than we knew. We could have come in as a district leadership team and said, well, here's the cuts that we're going to make, but we would not have known where those cuts would have the least impact on our students. So we really did put that in, and it wasn't a fun task. I'm sure that these principals that are here would tell you that this is tough. And because you weigh out, okay, if we do this, then, if we put this back, then what has to go? And so it was a continual juggling of what is our best answer. So beyond that, the other piece I just want to make sure and mention in terms of the attrition and how that could impact the reductions. We truly are hopeful that when we think about reducing all of those FTEs that are on this plan, that we have a means for any of those people that want to stay in the district to put them into another position that they're qualified for and keep them. And every year we have, 70 to 100 staff openings that, again, we would hope that, if somebody truly wants to stay in the district and they're willing to say, okay, I'm going to step out of this role and step into this role, that they're going to be able to stay.
Okay, I would like to kind of wrap this up. I think we've questioned quite a bit, and I would just, one last comment on my part. I would like to thank Virgil and Matt and all the building leaders, because this has not been a top-down cut. This is involving your people in your buildings to make the best decisions for the buildings themselves. And I don't think a lot of people can really appreciate how much time that they have spent in trying to do this right. This wasn't done willy-nilly. This wasn't done without a lot of thought and a lot of anguish involved. It's never fun making cuts, but we're in a situation where it has to be done. So I want to thank everybody involved and let you know that we do appreciate your time, because there was more time spent than anyone here in this room could ever imagine trying to get this done. So at this point in time, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the fiscal year 24-25 budget reduction plan as presented.
I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 24-25 budget reduction plans as presented, with any adjustments as directed by the Board of Education.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Please. I think we've done enough. Okay. Does anyone have one last thing they want to say? I've got to get it out there because literally we have to ask for discussion. So, okay. Not seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Harden. Item number 10.6, Title I Parent and Family Member Engagement.
Okay, just a couple of policies that we did look at last year, or last week, excuse me. It was last year, so I guess that's accurate. So this first one deals with Title I Parent and Family Member Engagement. If you'll recall, the reasoning behind the need to change this policy really was directive from the federal government that said that the wording needed to be as such. And in several cases, as you go through this policy, what actually was being done is the number one was being changed to an I, so that it was in Roman numerals rather than as a 1. And then in that title that you're looking at there, it added family member engagement and then got rid of the guideline piece that was at the end of that. And then again, looking down through this, there's that one line that's struck there. And again, a lot of what was struck in this was specific names of programs. The No Child Left Behind has been changed. That's no longer the naming of it, and so I guess they got wise enough to say that we're going to just eliminate those names of those programs, and that way when they change, you don't have to go back and change the policy again. So anyhow, otherwise I think pretty much what's in here are just the changes in those numberings, and I believe that's all there is. I think there's a Spanish version of the same thing that's presented down below that. So any questions on that one? Nothing real significant there.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve item number 9110.1.
I make a motion to approve 9110.1, Title I Parent and Family Member Engagement, as presented.
Seconded by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Discussion. Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the second policy that we talked about was medications in school, and really the area that we were looking at changing really dealt with the administration of Narcan. And basically there were just a couple of little changes here. If you notice here where it says secondary school, that secondary school isn't struck here. The intent is to have that secondary school struck as far as the secondary, so that rather than just talking about having Narcan available in the secondary schools, that it would be available in all of our schools. And then the other change really was down below where it talks about approved policies, and really we're talking about the procedures that would go along with the administration of Narcan in the buildings. And so rather than saying policies, it really should be having procedures in place. And then down below, that whole paragraph that's struck there really were the procedures that are in place for storing Narcan in the various buildings. And again, it's a procedure that is listed there, and my recommendation is always that you don't put procedures in policy. Policy should be the broad overview. Procedures should spell out how it's going to get done. So procedural operations really shouldn't show up in policies unless there's a specific reason for them to. And in this case, I would say there is not a reason for them to. Questions on that?
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve 8514 medications in school. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a clarifying question on what we're approving. So, Mr. Fisher, you had mentioned obviously that Secondary and
Secondary
schools
should
been
be
stricken.
struck.
Do we need to add that to the motion because it's not struck as presented?
I think you could maybe make the motion that as modified through discussion.
Works for me.
Okay, perfect.
And when we had it last month, it was struck. I'm not sure what. I get to
happens.
playing around with things, I must have.
It happens.
So I would entertain a motion to approve 8514, medications in school modified as discussed.
I make a motion to approve 8514 medications in school modified as discussed.
Second by Mr. Helinski. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, item number 11, reports. 11.1, Grand Island Public Schools Foundation Report. Ms. Lindsay Jerkins.
The Foundation's online scholarship application went live on December 1st. Students will be able to apply for 180 scholarships through this one application. The application is due February 7th, 2024. At their January board meeting, the Foundation will induct new board members Brandon Boley, Allison Larson, Shirley McCallum, and Valerie Porto. We will say goodbye to board members Tom Godowski and Jenna Grenier. We appreciate their service. Additionally, the Foundation hosted a new board member orientation session on Thursday, January 11th. The Foundation is gearing up for a busy spring. The annual staff campaign will begin in March, and scholarship review will begin in late February. Anyone who would like to be a volunteer and part of the scholarship review is welcome as long as he or she is not related to a GISH senior this year. Side note on that, it is really, really cool to read our students' essays that they submit for this, so I would encourage anyone with a little bit of free time to participate in that. The GIPS Foundation has published our annual impact report that can be found at gipsfoundation.org, and the Foundation Board will have the following business before them at the January 17th, 2024 meeting: the election of board members and board leadership for 2024, as well as the 2024 grant scholarship distribution percentage from invested funds. And that concludes the GIPS Foundation report.
Thank you, Ms. Jurgens. Item 11.2, Hattie Beltran.
Well, good night almost. But Happy New Year. So I'm gonna start off with athletics, with boys wrestling. Last month, Coach Morrison, the GISH wrestling coach for the boys, earned his 100th dual win. Have some even more exciting news for girls wrestling. For the third year in a row, they've celebrated the title of Flatwater Fracas after beating Norfolk this year for 52 to 17. And senior Brianna Kuchka was named the 10/11 News Athlete of the Week. She was also part of a group of girls that have earned 100 team points this season. So it'll just go from highest to lowest. Fabiola Cortez with 122.5 points, Jasmine Morales 121 points, Ali Edwards 116, Anaya Roberts 107.5, and Brianna with 105. And Anaya Roberts also made history this past weekend, becoming the first student athlete to earn 100 career wins for the girls wrestling program. And following that news, she was also named this week's 5-star performer by Local 4 Sports News. And then as for football, they were mentioned in the 2023 Lincoln Journal-Star All-State Honorable Mention. And that included Justice Holstetler, Caden Robertson, Jacob Albers, Riley Holing, Bodie Albers, Caleb Richardson, and Ryan Kostler. And then Reed Kelly was also named the Lincoln Journal-Star 2023 Super State First Team Offense and Class A Team All-State Offense. Then for activities, this past weekend, show choir hosted their kids camp on the 6th and the 7th, so Saturday and Sunday. And they also had their premiere night on Sunday, and I heard that they performed really well. And they actually have their first competition this weekend on Saturday, if it's not canceled, because speech also was going to have their first.
Both canceled.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. And then winter ball was also this past weekend, and student council was up early to decorate, and the theme was Under the Lanterns. And then yesterday, the superintendent student advisory council also met up, and we just had some discussions on kind of like the school environment because of all the news, like the phone policies, the budget reductions. And then Miss Albers was also there to report on her advocacy with period products statewide and how a bill was introduced to make period products become more accessible. And it was just, I'm really glad that with this position also came the part of being able to be a part of that group, because I'm able to have even more insight than I am like being, on student council. Like, I have some insight on the student body and it's helped a lot, but I think this group is really the most, I guess, the one that makes the most impact. And I'm really glad to be a part of that. But we just talked about, phone policies. It's going better than we thought it would. I didn't see it an issue being, I didn't see it being an issue for, juniors and seniors, because, especially, for, kids who take AP classes, I don't ever touch my phone in AP Lang or AP Macro. It's just not, it's so much work for those classes. It's just not, a given. But yeah, and the freshmen and sophomores in that group also didn't think that it was as bad as they thought it was going to be, which was nice because, my sisters they're twins, they're freshmen this year, and, they're going through a lot. It's my last year, so a lot of these changes won't affect me as much as it will to them. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be a part of that group.
Thank you. 11.3, Superintendent Report.
Well, we're very glad to have you be a part of that group too, Addie. It's okay to go ahead and say it's the best group. So, no, just a follow-up on that meeting. We did have some really good conversation on Wednesday with that superintendent student group, and really it's such a thoughtful group in terms of the depth of thought that they really do give when we bring a topic out and ask for their input on it. It's the thoughts that they shared around the phone policy and how that's impacting them, and the positives that they see, and then the concerns that still exist. I think they recognize that the struggle's not over by any means, and so I think that's really good. We talked about the restructuring of the academies and how that's impacting people. And I got some really good feedback from them in that area as well. And again, just talking through concerns. And they're such a great group to have in place because, we had really good dialogue around, what those concerns were initially and how some of those concerns have been addressed, but maybe some concerns, continue. And I know that when they leave that discussion, they're going to go out and share, with a number of other students who are then going to share with other students. So I think it's really a good tool for being able to bring ideas in, but also to push ideas and thoughts back out to the student body there. So I think there's a lot of really good things there. Just to spin off another thing that Eddie talked about, as far as the elementary show choir camp that just got wrapped up. We got a nice bike. Mitch just got one today from one of the parents about how impactful that was for their child, as far as really being able to grow in the arts and really sealing a passion for being a part of future choirs. And so again, I think those kind of things are great when we have the chance to do them, because a lot of it is done by our students, and anytime we have a chance to have student-led instruction for other students, I think that's a great opportunity for us. We've got to deal with some snow days. I don't know what the snow is doing right now, but that'll be my next concern when we get done with this, is to see what's going on out there. Because we did have snow days Monday and Tuesday, and so we've used up a big chunk of what we had available for snow days. We made the decision that we weren't going to rush into deciding what we were going to do for tomorrow, because we've got to get it right now. So we didn't make a call tonight, which is really where we'd prefer to, because we know it's much easier on everyone if we can make that call the night before. But with the way this storm is projected, it's supposed to end during the night. We're going to be out evaluating at 3 this morning and tomorrow morning, so that by 4 we can make a decision as to whether we're going to have school or not. So, I guess if your phone goes off, between 3 and 4 in the morning, that probably means we're not having school. But if it doesn't go off, then school's on. So anyhow, we'll see where that takes us. I think one of the things that certainly has been a big part of Mitch and I's life for the last few weeks is really trying to make sure that we're communicating as effectively as possible what's going on with this whole budget reduction plan. And so, we've did a video for the staff, and I met with the Chamber of Commerce board the other day, and I've got a meeting with Rotary coming up next week to go through it, and certainly as I am prepping for the State of the City address, this is certainly a central part of that State of the City address that we'll be talking about. One of the nice steps away from this whole thing that has been in the last week, I got to sit in on the football coaching interviews, because I coached football once, so they asked me to sit in on the football coaching interviews. So it's been nice to sit down with a group of really mostly some of our assistant football coaches and the ADs, and really talk a lot of football, and really just talk about how football, but really any sport or any activity, the impact that it has on young people and how important it is. So that's been a nice diversion from all of the budget planning work. Legislative session is now going on. So Addie mentioned that one of the bills that has been introduced does tie to the period poverty, which has been certainly a passion for Lisa, and she shared that, and it really has kind of become one of the focal points for that student advisory group too at the high school, as far as some of the work that they're doing. So Lisa, anything that you'd want to add about and also Lisa's meets with the School Boards Association. She's part of their legislative committee. So any legislative update that you want to share?
Right now, it's just the senators are dropping a lot of bills, so we're just hearing about a lot of different bills. And since we're on a short session, which I'm sure it'll feel like a long session by the time we get through it, it's a 60-day session. Last year was a 90-day. Next year will be a 90-day. So as far as priority bills go, senators get one priority bill during a short session. Committees get 2 priority bills, and then the speaker gets 25 priority bills. So those are lesser numbers than what they would get during a long session. Senator Danielle Conrad introduced LB 1050, which is a funded mandate. So if we've got to get a mandate, at least it's funded. There is money behind it to provide period products. And we're just really pleased that she was willing to drop a bill that did some funding. Lots of times when you're working on bills, in my meager experience is you've got to go slow to go slow. So it's just good to get it out there. It's good to get it talking about. I think it's super important to be able to provide period products in elementary school, middle school, and high school, because it can go back to attendance. So whatever roadblocks are in the way for students, we just want to try to alleviate those so we can get them in the classrooms. But looking forward to working on this over the course of the legislative session. And if anybody ever has any questions or anything, just let me know. Happy to talk to you about it.
Okay. Our legislative committee has been meeting the last couple weeks and will continue to meet on a weekly basis. We do have Angela Amick, our lobbyist, to sit in on those meetings and kind of give us an update on a weekly basis. So other than that, the only thing I wanted to mention is we do have key communicators on Monday. And, again, if you want to hear more, probably another recap of where we're at with our financial plan, that's probably what we're going to be sharing at that meeting as well. So that's all I have.
Don't have to worry about quorum, do we? Okay. At this point, we get to item number 12, executive session for the purpose of negotiations of the superintendent's contract, because it's in the best interest of the public to discuss this matter in closed session. So I'm going to entertain a motion for the board to convene to executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations of the superintendent's contract.
I make a motion for the board to convene to executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations of the superintendent's contract.
Seconded by Mr. Helinski. Discussion? Proceed to a vote. Before you got that 3-second delay. Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion that the board reconvene from executive session.
I'd make a motion for the board to reconvene from executive session.
Seconded by Mr. Helinski. Discussion, none. All vote. Motion passes. Okay, item 14, approval of any action item deemed necessary as a result of executive session. At this point in time, I would like to entertain a motion from someone to extend Mr. Fisher's contract for the next school year at the same compensation package that he was at this year.
I would make a motion to extend Mr. Fisher's contract for the next school year at the same rate of pay he's currently at this year.
Second by Ms. Malden. Discussion. None? What's that? Okay, all right. We proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Well, thank you.
I would like to make a public comment that we're very excited that Mr. Fisher has offered in this difficult time of budget cuts that he did not ask for any type of increase in pay or compensation package, anything whatsoever. So it really shows me true leadership in going forward, knowing that there are cuts being made and not asking for special consideration himself. So that shows a lot of character on your part. So thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. We sure appreciate you. Okay. Notification of upcoming meetings. The next regular Board of Education meeting will be Thursday, February 8th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. At this time, I call the meeting adjourned. It is now 8:19.